Hi, I'm James Kirby, Managing Editor at Business Spectator, and today I'm talking to Geoff Raby, former China Ambassador for Australia in Beijing and now a key figure in the China-Australia business relationship. He's a board member at Fortescue Iron and also a board member at Gloucester Coal. One of the key issues that's emerging at this time is a new debate really around inward investment in Australia. And particularly from China, particularly from state-owned enterprises. And the question is whether these companies are welcome in Australia. Certainly the leader of the opposition brought this up in Beijing 2 weeks ago. What was the response from the business community that you're in touch with to that address from Mr. Abbott?
I think, frankly, the address was very misreported in the Australian media. The people that were there at the Australian Chamber of Commerce breakfast that Mr. Abbott spoke at interpreted as something quite different, not as a statement of policy, but setting out a rhetorical question that we will look, Australia will continue to look at investment by state-owned enterprises carefully. We have the Foreign Investment Review Board that provides people, I think, with a high degree of comfort that the Australian government's looking at these investments, which it is doing, but it also is a very open investment regime we run. The Foreign Investment Review Board in the last 5 years has approved something like 230 or 40 individual projects by state-owned enterprises with a total value of getting close to 80 billion Australian dollars. What's happened, I think, is there's been just a big surge in Chinese investment, not just in Australia, but globally. And in fact, we need to be aware that we've got to compete with many other countries to attract Chinese investment.
That's something obviously always on the agenda, but tell me, there is a tightening of inward investment in land, at least agricultural land holding, on the agenda put forward by the coalition. Has that and the context of his misreported speech in Beijing, has that created any repercussions in the China business community in terms of their perception of Australia and its attitude towards investment from those companies?
I don't think so. There is a general concern about Australia as a destination for foreign investment.
Sorry, why is that?
Well, it's got a lot to do with changes in tax regimes, the sense of sovereign risk that now exists in Australia, and a number of other unexpected events such as capex inflation on major investment projects, labour shortages, difficulties of bringing in skilled workers and so on.
Do you take this issue of increased sovereign risk seriously? Are you convinced by that argument?
Well, I'm just saying what Chinese businesses say to me.
And what's driven that change of or concern, that highlighting of concern?
Well, particularly the change in the tax regimes.
The mining tax regime?
Mining tax and also the emissions charge. We were seen as a very stable regime, and that we're not viewed in that same way. Interestingly enough, though, the FIRB, which once was seen as a major problem to investment in Australia by Chinese firms, they've now understood how the FIRB works, the Foreign Investment Review Board. Their knowledge of it and comfort level with it has increased. But tax regime changes, that's new, and that's something that now tops the list in terms of concerns.
So one last thing on this. It would seem, on a global perspective, that tax regimes constantly change and that the dollar value of both these taxes, the mining tax and the climate tax, are really marginal in the overall workings of the Australian economy. But they have had a large impact in terms of they resonated through media and they resonated offshore. Are you saying that China business is recoiling from Australia because of these taxes, even though their scope is not enormous?
There's a perception with them. And a good question whether it's recoiling, I wouldn't put it so strongly. But if you talk to Chinese investors in Australia or potential investors, and you look at the list of concerns, no longer is the FIRB at the top of the list, but these more recent tax changes are. And that in some ways is understandable.
And is it particular to any area?
Well, no, but the majority of Chinese investment, of course, is in the resources and energy sectors of Australia.
And just where do you think we sit then in the international spectrum? Because you've alluded to this issue that China chooses between Africa and Canada, etc., and Australia. Have we moved then on the ladder of possibilities?
It's hard to measure. I could not say definitively, but I think increasingly the the Chinese will seek to diversify sources of supply away from Australia. They'll do it for strategic reasons, and they'll do it for a sense that Australia's become a more costly and difficult place to operate in.
So is there any immediate remedy to this issue for Australia?
Oh, I think we just need to keep promoting ourselves in China to Chinese companies. As you say, a lot of these taxes will not have a big impact on the actual bottom line of the businesses, but we need to get that message across very clearly to them.
Geoff Raby, thank you very much for talking to Business Spectator.
My pleasure. Thank you.